Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another edition of our Operational Reality with Rocco Million Live. I'm Rocco Million, your host. This is my group, Non-Partisans for Progress. Today, I want to quickly go over the federal job guarantee because it's that important. The first thing you need to understand is our communities are literally crumbling across America in dire need of work that is essential for the general welfare and common defense to ensure domestic tranquility, as it's mandated by our Constitution. So we have work all over that needs done, and our government is forcing millions to be unemployed and poor by targeting 5% unemployment. This is sadistic. It's untapped productive capacity. Our government can instead buy up all unemployment as the currency issuer. It could buy up all unemployment with a federally guaranteed living wage job program for everyone who wants one, to maximize our productive capacity, rebuilding our crumbling communities across America in green, sustainable ways that meet everybody's base needs in the public sector for free with essential public goods and services. Because it is a democratic means of production. The federal job guarantee gives us labor for any production that we need for domestic tranquility. And it's also the FJG, the federal job guarantee. It's also an economic stabilizer. So this is the most important feature. It's economy. It stabilizes our economy. It's the most important feature. It runs counter-cyclical to the natural ebbs and flows of the business cycle. When the business cycle goes down, the job guarantee program will expand, giving all the people that are being laid off incomes with the federal job guarantee, so that they can keep buying production. When the business people start to hire people back out of the job guarantee program because the economy is getting better, the job guarantee program will contract. So what it is they would enact the federal job guarantee, federally funded, locally administered, and it would be attaching our federal budget to the true full employment. And it would take the decision away from politicians. It would naturally be linked to the natural ebbs and flows of business in a counter-cyclical way to balance the economy as needed. And so what this does, it would make the minimum wage the federal living wage, and without even a mandate to the private sector. Because if the private sector didn't beat the federal living wage and the working conditions, then they wouldn't be able to attract the labor workforce away from the federal job guarantee. So it would, in essence, it would force capital to truly value labor, or else they wouldn't be able to attract the labor workforce away from the federal job guarantee to begin with. All right. It would also end gerrymandering. The federal job guarantee would restore democracy. It would empower LGBT. It would empower people of color and other marginalized groups with extreme mobility. Because if their local government or city doesn't meet their needs, if it doesn't work for the public purpose and keep their citizens happy, people can simply get up and move to a community that really does, knowing that they have a federally guaranteed living wage job waiting for them wherever they go. And what that does to the substandard city, they lose their tax base and their ability to operate, because local and state governments really are dependent on tax revenues, because local and state governments can't mint and tax. They can't make dollars. Only the federal government can do that. So the federal job guarantee, by giving people extreme mobility, it It restores democracy. It forces local and state governments to truly keep their citizens happy, to truly work for their citizens, or else their citizens will move and they will lose their tax base and ability to operate. It also destroys for-profit imperialism because it destroys the military's employer of last resort status. What that means is it'll take away the military's leverage to recruit poor, insecure workers all over as their only means of stable career opportunities. They have to go into the military and kill people. And without that leverage, without those workers being insecure, and now the military would have to compete with this federally guaranteed living wage job program. People like me would have much rather stayed home and rebuilt my own community in green, sustainable ways for a living wage job program. I would have never went to the military. And without people to fight their for-profit wars, our government would be forced to abandon its goals of empire. It would be forced to truly defend our rights against all enemies, foreign or domestic. That would be the only way they could inspire enough people to feel patriotic enough to leave the federally guaranteed living wage job program and go to the military to serve for our common defense. So in every way, the federal job guarantee restores democracy. This is how we transition into a post-capitalist society. You think about this. As more and more people see how government is able to create meaningful work and meet people's needs better than the private market ever could, people will start to trust government more and more. And as any type of problem occurs in the private sector, let's say automation or whatever, then people collectively would be more okay with our currency issuing government seizing the actual physical means of production, and making them for the general welfare and common defense to ensure domestic tranquility, instead of the means of production being for profit and owned by the 1%. And so it's transformational. The sky's the limit. We would redefine what work is with this program. No longer would work be defined by profit. Okay, if the government's paying people to take care of your sick grandmother, that's a really valuable job for society. All right, and that's production. That's why on earth, that would increase our economic output. So if government is paying people to perform socially valuable goods, socially essentially valuable goods, there's no need to charge the end user for these goods and services because the government never needs profit. It never needs income. As the currency issuer, its job is to spend the currency into existence, to provide for our general welfare and common defense, to ensure domestic tranquility. That means to ensure our population's happy. So by definition, that means we need educated and healthy and happy populations. You can't meet our needs of tomorrow with a sick population that's diseased and uneducated. So, of course, it's up to the federal government as the currency issuer, who never needs to worry about profit, to provide those needs. And the best way to do that is through a federally guaranteed living wage job program. Okay, they can actually increase the production of any production that we need for the general welfare. If we need labor for healthcare professionals to, meet the need for healthcare in our country, we have labor. If we need construction workers to build more hospitals, we have the labor through the job guarantee. All right, this is a democratic means of production. It's a way we transform our society, and we can do it all without raising taxes or making cuts. Again, because taxes are destroyed or deleted upon receipt. The federal government, as the currency issuer, never needs any kind of revenue. Taxes, it never needs bond sale revenues. It never needs an income. In fact, it has to spend dollars into existence before it can ever tax back money. Before it can even spend or sell bonds, it has to spend dollars into existence. So our currency issuing federal government can always spend the dollars required to buy up all unemployment and balance our economy up front with dollars instead of starving our economy, targeting unemployment, enforcing artificial scarcity on the masses and starvation wage jobs that force us into tons of private credit just to consume production and survive. We don't have to do that. We can all collectively demand a federally guaranteed living wage job program today, and we can end involuntary unemployment. We can end pointless poverty. We can do that. We can restore systemic hope. We can foster each person's true potential instead of inflicting systemic abuse of involuntary unemployment and for-profit justice and for-profit imperialism and for-profit energy and for-profit healthcare and for-profit education. All right. We can have a completely sustainable green society where everyone's needs are met and everybody has opportunity. But that doesn't make profit for the 1%. They don't want you to understand that because they get rich on scarcity. So they don't want a life of plenty, and they don't want a green, sustainable society where everybody's needs are met because they're able to squeeze more profit on scarcity. Understand it and fight back with the federally guaranteed living wage job program. Is there any questions about this before I go? I want to keep this real short. The unemployed are not a necessary buffer stock with the modern monetary system. Absolutely. Actually, it's horrible. There's absolutely no need. There's absolutely no need for our government to keep a target unemployment. There's no natural rate of unemployment other than zero. The only natural rate of involuntary unemployment is zero. All right. If government makes unemployment to provide for the general welfare with paid employment, then it's government's duty to always maintain full employment for that same general welfare, because it would never be in the public purpose to force millions of people to be unemployed and desperate and poor and millions more to be working poor in the starvation wage environments that involuntary unemployment creates. That's the exact opposite of domestic tranquility. That's the exact opposite of our socially owned government's job. Our socially owned government is mandated to work for the public purpose, the general welfare, the common defense, to ensure domestic tranquility. So that means our socially owned government is mandated to work for the public purpose and let the individual make what they can from the balanced economy that creates. Our government, our socially owned government, is never supposed to work for the individual and for society to make do with the scraps like we do with our trickle down status quo. That's fascism. The government, nowhere in the Constitution will you see that. You'll see the government's job is to mint and tax to provide for the general welfare and common defense to ensure domestic tranquility. So that means the federal government never needs income. It can always spend dollars into existence to buy anything for sale in dollars. We are only limited by the things dollars buy. So our government can always balance our economy up front with dollars, deficit spending. By targeting our federal budget to true full employment, we can balance our economy with dollars up front, maximizing our productive capacity with a federally guaranteed, locally administered job guarantee. All right, maximizing our productive capacity in green, sustainable ways that meet everybody's base needs in the public sector for free, without raising taxes, without making cuts, because public debt for society and a higher standard of living is the entire point of having a socially owned government in dollars in a monetary system to begin with. Thank you, guys. Take it easy. Let me see if there's any questions before I go. Anybody not agree with me or want to talk about the UBI maybe and why the UBI is no substitute for a federally guaranteed living wage job program? Well, I'm going to talk about it anyway. But you know what? I can't because I'm trying to make this quick, guys. All right, thanks. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me once again with our Operational Reality with Rocco Million Quick Hitters Edition. Today I'm talking about the Trump trade war, and I'm talking about our trade deficit because, even though I do see this stuff talked about in our mainstream media, I don't see them emphasizing in the really important parts that people do need to understand. So that's what I'm going to focus on today. What they don't focus on, because that's what you need to understand. So first of all, when we're talking about this trade war, I want to make sure everyone understands when we put tariffs on our imports, that just makes our lives harder. That just makes us in more pain, puts us in more pain at the bottom, more expensive. We're going to have more expensive imports now, more expensive to live. So that's not a good, and the other thing about this is, why would you ever want to, get into a trade war with our trading partners? Right now we have a trade deficit. So this means we're net importers. So we get the finite real resources of the whole world for our infinite dollars. And people like Trump are saying that the world is taking advantage of us. Ages. All right. We have work all across America today that isn't getting done. That's essential to the general welfare. I'm talking about, think about poisoned drinking water, collapsing bridges, understaffed schools, understaffed elderly care, so we have tons of work. Why are we chasing down offshore jobs? Why are we acting like we're being hurt by our trade deficit? This is a great thing. It allows us to get cheap imports, and then it allows our work to focus on our society, raising everybody's standard of living with a federally guaranteed living wage job program, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, rebuilding our crumbling communities across America, raising everybody's standard of living with things like top-notch healthcare and education and green sustainable energy and fully staffed schools and elderly care and anything else you could think of, because a federal job guarantee is a democratic means of production capable of increasing just about any production that we need for the general welfare of society. So when you hear these politicians act like they're so worried about saving jobs and bringing jobs back and fighting for labor, it's all BS. Because if we have if we have unemployment present in our economy, it's always because our federal government made a choice to not make dollars by law from thin air to buy up all that unemployment with a federal job guarantee. So it's not, if they want to if they want jobs in the economy, you don't have to go through the private sector. The private sector only operates for profit. So they're not going to do much of the work that our society needs, like rebuilding Flint's infrastructure or our bridges or this or that, because there's no real profit motive in it. So this is why it's up to our socially owned government, who is mandated to provide for the general welfare and domestic tranquility, who is mandated to make dollars from thin air by law to provide for that general welfare. Okay, to provision society with essential public services. Really, this is all about Trump and our right-wing neoliberal status quo to privatize the public space. Is what it's all about. Because if he wanted to bring back jobs, he could buy up every single unemployed person today and put them to work and increase our economic output today, rebuilding our crumbling communities across America in green, sustainable ways today with a federally guaranteed living wage job program. But he doesn't want to do that. He wants to privatize the public space. They want to, keep energy for profit. They want to keep healthcare for profit. They want to keep education for profit. And it's not just the Republicans. This is Democrats too. And this. Now, the second part of this that they don't talk about about our trade deficit, and I did see a special Vice News on HBO, and to their credit, one guy did mention this briefly anyway, that our trade deficit is a great thing. All right, we never want to because that allows us to get cheap imports. So, and the other part of this is when when we're running a trade deficit, that means our federal government must deficit spend enough to offset that foreign leakage, because when we're running a trade deficit, we're getting the real resources from the world. We're buying them with our dollars. Those dollars leave the economy. So that means that it could be a great thing as long as government replaces all the dollars lost that leave the economy, when we buy the world's resources. And government can easily do that by simply targeting the budget to true full employment with a federal job guarantee for everyone who wants one. And then the budget would automatically go to where it needs to be to maintain true full employment. It would automatically. So is there any questions? I'm getting the idea, but we want to shut it all down because of climate change now. We have to slow down production. Let me see. Okay, Cindy, let me see. Getting the idea. Change now. We have to slow down production. Still, this idea can be harnessed towards constructive ends. Yeah, that's my point. The federal job guarantee is a democratic means of production, Cindy. So this can absolutely be geared to green, sustainable living in energy, in every aspect. The federal job guarantee could easily rebuild our crumbling infrastructure across America in green, sustainable ways. Sustainable farming, you name it, all kinds of stuff. But that's the whole point of this. And we don't have to slow down production. We don't need to inflict any more artificial scarcity on people already. We already target 5% unemployment. That forces millions of people to be poor and unemployed at a time when our communities are crumbling. Communities are literally crumbling. And we're targeting 5% unemployment. That's sadistic artificial scarcity. Our government can always buy up that unemployment and maximize that untapped productive capacity, rebuilding our crumbling communities, like I said, in green, sustainable ways. So we have to maximize our productive capacity, but we got to do it in green, sustainable ways. Absolutely. And so that means things like energy have to be done by the government, who isn't motivated by profit, because our federal government never needs profit, because dollars are simply a law to satisfy tax. It's a social construct. So handing farmers money is a good thing. Oh, that's Jimmy. Hi, Jimmy. In regards to what? Well, I think that any policies of Trump's that are hurting farmers, so if subsidies helps them, then yeah, that's okay. But it is not just them. We need help at the bottom. We could be spending money and helping everybody at the bottom, putting demand at the bottom with a federal job guarantee right now. I'm not talking about handouts. I'm talking about the general welfare. I'm talking about domestic tranquility. We need essential public resources. Our social contract, the Constitution, it mandates that our socially owned government provision society with real resources, like a military, an infrastructure, legal system, sanitation systems, healthcare, top-notch healthcare, top-notch education. Things like that are essential for the general welfare, because we need smart, healthy, happy populations to produce our needs of tomorrow. So the whole thing about this is the money part of the equation doesn't even matter. All right. That's always infinite for our federal government. The only thing that matters is our government makes the required investments into our society and into our productive capacity to ensure that we have enough real resources created and available for anybody to buy with any money. That's what it's about. So we're not limited by money. We're limited by real resources. We're limited by what money buys. Money is a social construct. It's a law. We can't run out of laws. So we can't run out of money. But back to the trade deficit. Does everyone understand it? when we run a trade deficit, if you would try to run a balanced federal budget, or worse, a federal surplus, that means that you are starving the economy of public spending. Then we are all forced to drain our savings, and we're forced into private credit just to consume production and survive. And because private credit always dries up, this leads to booms, busts, and bailouts that only help the rich. And government must move back into a huge deficit position anyway to bail out the rich. So it's sadistic. It's artificial scarcity that kills more than drugs and guns combined. We don't see no marches against that, because our government can always buy up all unemployment and balance our economy up front with a federal job guarantee, maximize our productive capacity to meet us. And when we're running a trade deficit, that means that we're buying the products of the world. So we're not forcing them to take our dollars. We're not, it isn't our military that gives us our international reserve currency status. The world has the most faith in America. After World War II, it was, and since only America commands the trust of the world. The world wants our dollars. We want cheap imports. Nobody's being forced into anything. And when we do bomb a nation like Libya, say, for dropping the dollar, that's just a political choice to make somebody rich. It's complete. It's not. It has nothing to do with our operational necessity. Because we don't need to be raiding nations around the world with for-profit imperialism, real resource, green and sustainable. We could be completely green and sustainable here in America, meet everybody's base needs. We're resource rich. Hey, what's up, everybody? Dolores, Bill, Jimmy. Finally, some people showed up, because on my group and page, it keeps on cutting out. The connection is just horrible. But on the page and group, I had no viewers, so I figured I'd go live from my house. So what this means is, though, when we're running a trade deficit, it means our government must deficit spend enough to cover that foreign leakage. Because when we're buying the products of the world, our dollars are leaving our economy. They're going to China or wherever, and getting their cheap. Government must resupply those dollars. Our government must resupply those dollars. And it can easily do that by targeting the budget to true full employment with a federal job guarantee for everyone who wants one. We don't need to be inflict artificial scarcity and pain at the bottom. That's the whole point with this stuff. And both parties they think along the same lines. They're both right-wing neoliberals that have been privatizing our public space, privatizing essential public goods, making them private and for profit, and therefore incapable of meeting everybody's needs. Both parties have been doing this from the 70s. That's neoliberalism, to privatize the public space and make everything, to deregulate everything, to starve our economy of public spending, with targeting unemployment and reducing deficits, forcing us all into copious amounts of private credit just to consume production and survive. And that always leads to booms, busts, and bailouts. And government must move back into a huge deficit position anyway to bail out the rich. It's sadistic artificial scarcity. We have untapped productive capacity all over America. We force millions of people to be unemployed and poor, with 5% targeting 5% unemployment at a time when our communities are crumbling, in need of work that's essential to the general welfare and domestic tranquility, which is government's job. That's untapped productive capacity. What else can I say? So thanks, guys. Any questions? Anything we want to talk about before I go? Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another edition of our Operational Reality with Rocco Million Live. This is a quick hitter edition. I'm Rocco Million, the host. This is my group, Non-Partisans for Progress. Bear with me. I'm really sick. Got strep throat or something. But, just watching the news, and another horrible mass shooting has happened. And, all the mainstream media runs around like chickens with their heads cut off, doing mental gymnastics to avoid, our simple reality, to avoid the brutality of our reality. Because the mainstream doesn't want to get to the root issue that causes people to snap, that causes our society to be dysfunctional and violent. The mainstream doesn't want you to look at that. And it's really simple. This is simple stuff. So the elites and the ruling class, they have to make everything complex. They do this to obscure, the simple solutions that we can be employing right now to make life better for millions of people across America. That's why all of us have to stand up and speak out. We have to learn our actual operational reality from the greats, like people like Dr. Stephanie Kelton, Dr. Fidel Kaboob, economist Ellis Winningham, Bill Mitchell, Dr. Bill Mitchell, all the greats. Follow Real Progressives, follow Modern Money Network, follow the Deficit Owls, join and follow my group and page, Non-Partisans for Progress. This is how we're going to change the world. Seriously. We're fighting evil and systemic abuse that's done in our name. We don't necessarily fight because we know we're going to win. We fight because we simply don't want to accept evil and systemic abuse committed in our name. We don't want to be that type of person. So nobody really knows why this guy in Southern California, snapped, and 12 more people were killed in this mass shooting event. And nobody really knows why, but we do know that something has changed in our society. This has never been the case. We've had guns from the beginning of America, yet, under the New Deal, full employment policies of the New Deal, for instance, you didn't have people bringing guns to school. You didn't have people going around shooting, masses of innocent people. There was always, if it didn't make dollars, it didn't make sense. People didn't go around doing this type of thing every other day like they do today. Something changed in our society. And, we have to look at what was that change. Because back in, for instance, under the full employment policies of the New Deal, we went from the Great Depression to the #1 world superpower by investing in our society and providing people with opportunity. Everybody had an opportunity to escape poverty. Even despite the systemic racism, this was the closest we've come to balancing our economy. We spent, most of the money to the bottom 90% at this time. We balanced our economy despite the systemic racism, of course. And today we wouldn't have to do that either, of course. But, we balanced our economy. You can get a career straight from high school back under the New Deal, from the 40s to the 70s. You can get a good job, a career straight out of high school and support a whole family with just that one income. So this is when we created the American dream, the middle class that the whole world was envious of. You didn't have these type of horrible events. You still had crime and crazy people. Don't get me wrong. We can never get rid of that. But, the alternative, what we do today, we don't target true full employment like government's mandated to do. The Federal Reserve is mandated to target full employment. We don't do that anymore. From the 70s, both parties, our government has gotten the public to, accept targeting unemployment, accept involuntary unemployment. And people accept it without even thinking about what that means. When our government targets 5% unemployment, that means our government is forcing millions of people to be unemployed and poor in a class war against all labor wages, because all those millions of people government forces to be unemployed, they're always going to be willing to work for starvation wages under horrible conditions because they're so desperate, they're unemployed. So that drives everyone's labor wages down. That's why our wages have been stagnant from the 70s. While our productivity and our corporate and our cost of living and their corporate profits are all at record highs, our wages have been stagnant from the 70s. So what that means, in short, is we don't make enough money to even buy what we produce. Nobody has any disposable income. From the 70s, our government has been engaged in a very horrible class war. They ramped it up in the 70s to kill the collectivism of the New Deal. And they got America to buy into this horrible lie. And we forced millions of people to be unemployed and poor. And while we have work all over America that needs done, our communities are literally crumbling. Bridges are falling down. Schools are understaffed. People are drinking poisoned water, and we're forcing millions of people to be unemployed and poor. That is systemic abuse. It can't be fixed by personal responsibility. And people, they don't want to see this. They want to blame people on food stamps instead of the Walmart who pays them starvation wages. The point of this is systemic abuse. Even if every single worker had the very best job skills and every worker had the most personal responsibility, because our government targets 5% unemployment, we would still be forcing millions of people to be poor and unemployed, regardless. And that isn't how you promote domestic tranquility. That isn't how you ensure domestic tranquility, which is the government's job, according to our social contract, the Constitution. That's the exact opposite. And so I got this up here because this is what makes, I'm not saying we can ever get rid of crazy people, but we don't have to reward greed. We don't have to put profit over people. Every time kids see homeless people dying of exposure, and around the corner they see empty foreclosed houses, they're being taught to put profit over people. Every time they see loved ones or friends suffering and dying of treatable, preventable illness for simply a lack of cash, they're being taught to put profit over people in society. Every time they see people lose their life and their freedom over flowers because of for-profit justice, even subconsciously, they're being taught to put profit over people in society. And so when you do this over time to your people, and then you make you starve them of public spending, you cut the social safety net, you destroy public education, public health care, you let the infrastructure disintegrate, you let our productive capacity fall to the wayside, and you leave tons of idle resources unused, like unemployment, and tons of resources idle because they don't make enough profit. For instance, the for-profit markets, they don't really want to go in and fix the infrastructure all through the country because there's no profit motive in it. And so our government just allows this work to sit dormant and need done. And we also force millions to be unemployed and poor because our government can always pay dollars to get them unemployed people to do the work that needs done. It's that simple. Our government can always buy up all unemployed people and rebuild our crumbling communities in green, sustainable ways that meet everybody's base needs in the public sector for free. Because if our government's paying doctors and teachers to administer health care and to teach people, there's no need for the government to charge the end user of these essential public goods and services, because these essential public goods and services are valuable in and of themselves. We need educated and smart and healthy people, to produce our needs of tomorrow. We need this to ensure domestic tranquility, because this is how you reduce these people that are, going around and feeling so hopeless and so radicalized and so indifferent to human suffering. They are so indifferent to pointless suffering that they could go out and kill people, innocent people. That's how putting profit over people is how you make us indifferent to human suffering. Every time you turn away and you don't care about the people that are being raped, robbed, and killed legally over flowers in a for-profit justice system, this is exactly what you're doing. You're becoming indifferent to all the pointless human suffering that these systems create. Every time you overlook and don't think about the fact that we're forcing millions of people to be unemployed and poor, regardless of their job skills, regardless of their personal responsibility, because even if they if they beat somebody else out of a living wage job, one of these unemployed people, if they beat somebody else out of their living wage job, then that person's out of a living wage job. So the involuntary unemployment is a systemic abuse that can't be fixed by personal responsibility. People need to understand this. So punching down on people on food stamps is not only wrong, it's sadistic. These are victims of class war. I don't care who if people that look able-bodied and you think, oh, they could work, there's no reason they should be collecting off the government. And that person we're all victims of class war, regardless. And they're not the leech, okay? The little bit that they're sustaining their life with from government is nothing compared to the hundreds of millions in corporate welfare and, the hundreds of millions in corrupt kickbacks. That's the real leech. That's the real parasite. And by getting us to, not look at that, but instead pick the low-hanging fruit and attack the victims at the bottom, punch down on the people on food stamps, instead of looking at the Walmarts who pay them, starvation wages. In this way, we're all becoming indifferent to pointless suffering and death. And when you do that, people become radicalized. Life becomes cheap and society becomes dysfunctional, and then, we just had this is the reason though. This is the reason why people get radicalized. All right. Our government is starving our economy of public spending. It's cutting the social safety net. So no mental health services, no public health, no public education services. Our infrastructure is failing. So, people are being literally poisoned and when they drink, eat, and breathe the air, all of these factors. And then we criminalize nature and peaceful behavior. And we have a for-profit justice system to control all the millions that we force to be unemployed and the millions more that we force to be working starvation wage jobs because of that involuntary unemployment. So we have to inflict this for-profit justice system when we give cops quotas and they got to find revenue to keep their police departments operational. So they become hunters. And it's not about protecting and serving. It's about getting enough revenue to stay operational. So they use predatory behavior to fill their quotas. They have to target the most vulnerable communities because those are the communities that can't fight back. Nobody cares what they say. Nobody cares if you use heavy-handed tactics in them communities to fill your quotas. And so this radicalizes people. You beat a dog every day and feed it gunpowder, the dog's going to be crazy. It ain't the dog's fault. It's the systemic abuse that dog was forced to live under. It's the same way with society. You can't inflict economic and police terror on the majority of Americans through involuntary unemployment and for-profit justice, and then, you can't treat people like enemy combatants and then wonder why they're responding like insurgents. You could do it, but you're being a fool. And that's how our mainstream media is today. Look at the reality, people are so disconnected. Life is so cheap, because we have been taught to put profit over people in society from birth. Because we've been taught to not think about the people suffering and dying of exposure. Well, we have enough empty houses to shelter them all 4 times over. We're told to not think about that. Put it out of your mind. That's literally becoming indifferent to pointless suffering. We're told to not think about the horrible realities of the world. Think about better things, be more positive. Only in America do people take pride in working themselves to an early grave. It's insidious. It's sick. We think that's something to be proud of. No, we need to fight back. And this is what creates the people. Look at this meme. Okay, this is Alan Greenspan. He's the chairman of the Fed. He was testifying before Congress under oath in 97 on the marvels of the economy he was running. And he said straight out, they didn't even try to hide this. Many times they say straight away what they mean. Look at the Powell memo too. But anyway, Greenspan said straight out to the Congress, commenting about the marvels of the economy, that one of the main bases for its economic success was imposing what he called greater worker insecurity. And Chomsky, Noam Chomsky, the scholar, goes on to describe what Greenspan means by, worker insecurity. And he says, it's very healthy for society. So the corporations think when workers are insecure because they won't ask for higher wages. They won't go on strike. They won't call for benefits. They'll serve the masters gladly and passively. And that's optimal for corporations' economic health. At the time, everybody regarded Greenspan's comment as reasonable, judging by the lack of reaction and the great acclaim that he enjoyed. And still today, people agree with this line of thinking. But, when you have all these insecure workers, and this is mainly created by targeting 5% unemployment, again, that keeps millions of people always unemployed and so desperate that they'll work for starvation wages. So this fosters starvation wage environments. And when you do that, when people can't make a living, working full time, and, when the social norms no longer become true, people grew up thinking if you do the right thing, you obey the law, you get a good education, you work hard, and there will always be a place for you in our society. When that no longer holds true, like getting a full-time job and still not being able to make it, naturally people are going to lose hope. People are going to become radicalized. They got to survive. They need to get money and survive. So they're forced onto the alternative economy, the black market, because that's the only other place you can go. When the government's refusing to spend the dollars that are required to produce true full employment and maximize our productive capacity, when government refuses to spend those dollars, there's nothing else that we could do. We have to go to the black market. We have to leverage ourselves to the eyeballs with private credit just to consume production and survive. We have to use credit cards for milk and eggs, credit for healthcare, credit for education, credit for transportation, credit for housing. And we live a precarious existence, literally one mistake away or one act of God away from being broke and destitute, and that's worker insecurity. And that also makes people crazy. Okay. You don't really care about racism, things like that. You don't care about the plight of anybody underneath you. You're only worried about your survival. You're only worried about what you have to deal with. And so it's by design. This is how they get us this is class antagonism. They get you to hate your neighbor who is on welfare while you work full time and you still can't make it and you don't qualify for food stamps. And so you have this class antagonism against your neighbor who is able-bodied for all you know, and he's not working and he's able to get food stamps and that, all that. So you hate him. And so you're not going to vote to help his interests. And this is by design. This is how they keep us artificially separated at the bottom, because really both people have the same class interests. You live next door to each other. You both want your community to be strong, clean, healthy, safe. We have the same class interests. Only through these artificial constructs, partisanship, through things like that, do they get us to be distracted and fighting against each other for scraps instead of demanding a seat at the table in unity, in solidarity. We have to understand that because that's the only way we're going to overcome it. We have all the power collectively. The ruling class only have an illusion of power. All right, they can only do what we collectively allow. All right, not too long ago, kids had to work 60 hours a week. And they couldn't go to school, but we collectively demanded labor laws, child labor laws. So we forced the issue. Every working class gain we got has been got by collectively demanding the public purpose. So we can always collectively do this again and force Congress to buy up all unemployment, to satisfy its constitutional mandate, to balance our economy up front with dollars by targeting the federal budget deficit to true full employment with a federally guaranteed living wage job program for everyone who wants one. You want to see mass shootings go down? Give everybody systemic hope. Give them a ladder out of poverty. All right. If people have a living wage job, they're much less likely to be involved in the black markets. People don't want to look over their shoulder. After you're 14 years old, it's not cool to sell drugs. People, thug life isn't cool. We're trying to survive, and we would much rather have legit living wage jobs with a future and a promise of even better paid work in the private sector once our job skills are developed in the right way. Bottom line, we could have the society and economy that fosters everybody's full potential instead of inflicting systemic abuse and evil, to let 1% of the population live in decadence while the rest of us suffer under artificial scarcity. And we suffer and die of pointless austerity. So we're dying and suffering literally for no other reason than a lack of cash. And the thing about this is we have enough real resources to meet everybody's base needs multiple times over. And we could do this in a green, sustainable way. But instead, we collectively allow our government to work for the private purpose of the 1% at everybody else's expense. And we allow our government to subvert our democracy and our public purpose. And so our communities, quite naturally, starved of public resources, starved of public money, starved of any humanity, quite naturally descend into chaos. And we end up with this dystopian reality straight out of a dystopian novel. We live a horrible reality that could be easily mistaken for any of the horrible dystopian reality books of the 20th century. It's sick, but it's the truth. And it's because people don't care. They don't want to focus on reality. It's easier to say, oh, well, we need to ban guns. That's the problem. Guns are the problem. Look, I'm all for safe gun laws. I'm all for safe gun regulations, but taking more guns away, taking more rights away is not going to help this problem. If you allow our government to radicalize millions of people on a systemic level, the radicalized people are just going to use a different weapon to kill, so nothing would change. Now, actually, in a lot of areas, we have too many gun rights. Right now, I can't even get a gun to defend myself or hunt because I had a suicide attempt once upon a time. But obviously the doctors let me go. So obviously I'm safe to be in the community. So why on earth can they take my gun then? They should have to have a public hearing and demonstrate why I'm not able to have a gun. That's bullshit. It's simply because they know who I am. They read my Facebook and they discriminate against me. And so we're already having our rights taken. Giving up more rights is not going to help this. We have to stop the economic terrorism of involuntary unemployment. We have to foster people, their full potential. We have to have top-notch public education and healthcare, top-notch infrastructure. We have to have living wage jobs available for anyone. And I guarantee you life will get better. We won't be seeing this craziness every other day because people will have, hope for a better tomorrow. They'll be getting solidarity with living wage jobs that work on our community, rebuilding our communities in green, sustainable ways, working with each other, building solidarity and sense of pride in your community and in yourself. We can do this. So the other thing is the election. Real quick, I want to talk about. I'm going to do a longer one on these, but this is a horrible disappointment. People, again, they want to completely ignore the whole message of our midterm election. There's a reason why, even in the face of this overt monster, fascist monster named Trump, we didn't get a blue wave. The Republicans picked up seats in the Senate. In fact, we won the House, but really, in these circumstances, there should have been a blue tsunami. And the fact that there wasn't, that message needs to be understood. And it's simple as the writing's on the wall. This is not complex for those of us not caught up in partisan BS. But people are sick of it. They're not going to vote for liberals that are more concerned with being in the center, pretty much right wing, than helping the working class. Again, this was Clinton's main man, Greenspan. Clinton was fine keeping millions of people unemployed while our communities crumbled. And, he was fine starving our communities of dollars to force us all into private credit just to consume production and survive. So this blew huge bubbles in our markets, the dot-com era, the housing bubble, and it obscured the horrible Clinton reality. But Clinton's surpluses that he ran starved our economy of dollars. And because private credit always dries up, eventually those bubbles would pop. And that's exactly what happened in the global financial crisis. Eventually they did pop, and millions of people had to lose their homes. And what did Obama do? He let the millions of victims lose their homes, 10 million families, and he bailed out the predators. People are sick of it. That's why Obama then lost the House and the Senate, because Obama had, when he came into power, I voted for him twice. When he came into power, he had the Senate and the majority of the Senate and the majority of the House. That's how he passed Obamacare, and he did all the bailouts. And that's how the 2010 Tea Party takeover happened, because he completely abandoned the working class. And so, nobody had faith in him. Nobody had that hope. And the right wing was able to come in and capitalize on everybody's hate and distrust of government. And, because, again, our government blatantly bailed out the predators, trillions of dollars of our public money, and let 10 million victims lose their homes because of the predatory behaviors of the banks and government, And so, that's voter suppression too. When you have a right-wing duopoly, both parties are a representative of the same right-wing ideology, neoliberalism, that suppresses the vote big time. The fact that we can't even get 40% voter turnout, this is a huge warning call. This should be a wake-up call that we have a banana republic. That's horrible. We had 112 million people vote in the midterms, and that was a record, and everyone was happy. That ain't even a third of America. That's horrible, and that is an indictment of our democracy at large. That's an indictment of, our democracy. That means we have a banana republic. You look at the exit polls and compared to the official voter data, there's huge discrepancies. Margins usually seen in banana republics, right? And we have them here in America all the time. We close down voter registration sites. We close down voter polling, election polling places, and make voters wait hours on end to vote, to suppress the vote. All right. And when people know that both choices are right wingers, why even participate at all? When they know their government is overtly fascist, why even participate at all? That's by design. That's why they do it like this. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact. Our elections are rigged, and we suppress the vote. We purge voters. Every step of the way, the elections are phony, and we need an intervention in America. We actually do, and only we, the people, can bring this intervention. We have to remember our roots. We have to get back to the Constitution and represent the things that we hold dear, like democracy. Because right now we're headed for a ditch. Anyway, we didn't have that blue wave like the Democrats were suggesting. Right now, Democrats are consoling themselves saying, oh, it's Trump's great economy. That's why the great economy helped him. No, it's not. That's you ignoring the facts and diverting blame. We have a horrible economy. We have record amounts of private household debt. So, how could you ever say that's a good economy? We literally have millions of people unemployed while our communities are crumbling. How is that a good economy? We literally have millions of people working starvation wage jobs. How is that a good economy? All right. And yet the Democrats will give that to the Republicans. All right. That's because they're both right wing neoliberals who put profit over people in society. Both parties will target 5% unemployment. Both parties will privatize our public space. Both parties make essential public goods and services private and for profit, and therefore incapable of meeting everybody's needs. Incapable then of satisfying our public purpose as it's mandated by our Constitution. Both parties do this. I live under the same economic and police terror under Obama as I do under Trump. All right. And that by design keeps people from voting. That suppresses the vote. That makes people crazy too. All right. When you know that your voice is not represented, and you live in this hell every day, you got to live in and amongst the shit and the victims that, you want to talk about PTSD, the average people living out on the street, the average people having to survive on the black market to put food on the table. They're living with PTSD every day. My mom has it from having to float checks every day just to put food on the table. She'd have to chase these checks all around. And I don't know how she did it. God bless her. She never got arrested either. But this radicalizes us. It makes us indifferent. And it makes us callous, and not really care about the systemic abuse and evil that's committed in our name every day. It makes us feel powerless, like we can't do anything anyway, so just accept it, make the best of it. And that's the exact wrong thing to take. That's being complicit. That's accepting evil in your name. And again, you don't have to do that. We don't fight evil because we know we're going to win. We fight evil simply because we don't want to be the type of people that accept evil in our name at any level. I don't care if it's a lesser evil, whatever. I don't want to be that type of person. When I die, I want to know that I opposed systemic abuse and evil in every single way that I could. All right, guys, let me see if there's any comments or anything to talk about. So, yeah, they want to focus on the Democrats don't want to focus on reality. They lost the working class. All right, they lost the working class because they don't represent us. All right, have you noticed nobody talks about Bernie Sanders for 2020? You would think he would be the favorite for every news analyst. He's the most influential politician in America. Yet every other person is named as a possible Democratic nominee for president in 2020, but Bernie Sanders. So don't tell me Bernie's a sheepdog either, because if he's a sheepdog, he's definitely the black sheep. They don't really like him at all. But all right, guys. Desperate people do desperate things. Morning, Rock. All right, morning, everybody. All right, take it easy.